Okay, hi, Redhead whiskey. No, there you go. Redhead whiskey here. Stumbled on the Redhead for a reason. So it's a great Friday here in Jersey. There's a lot of snow, and I have a really immense pleasure of hosting Rob from Holyrood Distillery, a distillery that combines innovation and tradition, and you will tell us all about it. So thank you so much, Rob, for joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Aline, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. So let's start from the beginning. What got you to do this insane? That's what I usually ask people. What made you do this insane thing called distilling whiskey?
Well, it's there's a long answer and a short answer, so I'll give you the short answer. My wife and I took a bit of a career break in 2004, and we moved over to Edinburgh. I did a master's degree at the University of Edinburgh, and we ended up getting into whiskey. We joined the Water of Life Society at the University of Edinburgh.
Wait, what made you do that all of a sudden? Did you?
Well, when in Rome, you try some new things. And my wife's family had always been whiskey drinkers, but not mine. So I didn't grow up with it. I wasn't a whiskey drinker at the time. But in Scotland, you want to try some new things, and obviously Scotch is everywhere in Edinburgh. So I had some friends in my classes who said, well, you should come along, it's lots of fun. And so we gave it a go and got bit by the whiskey bug and got bit by the Scotland bug, and came back to Canada with an idea of starting a distillery. And that was 2005. So, and then the nugget for Holyrood didn't sort of hatch until 2013. So these are kind of long thinking periods with sometimes some false starts along the way.
So right now you're based in?
I spend a lot of my time in Edinburgh, but right now I'm in Calgary, which also has snow and is somewhere around minus 25 Celsius right now. So yeah, a bit chilly.
Oh, that's a nice weather. But the distillery is based in Edinburgh.
The distillery is based in the middle of Edinburgh.
Which is an unusual location for a distillery.
Well, it is a challenging location in that it is it is, I think, the most urban distillery in Scotland.
For sure. Why did you choose Edinburgh?
Well, very strategically, in fact, and part just from the emotional connection. My wife and I both love Edinburgh. And in 2013, I was 49, so I decided to have a midlife crisis and go, what do I want to do? And thought, well, if I really am going to go ahead with building a distillery somewhere, where would I want that to be? And at this point, the craft distilling boom had taken off in North America. So,
yeah,
you're just one of many there. And thought, well, Scotch whiskey is the most valuable spirits appellation in the world. We both love Edinburgh. We both love Scotland. We've got good contacts in the industry there. And at the time, Edinburgh didn't have a distillery, a malt distillery. It had North British, of course, but not open to visitors.
Right. Yeah.
And so the idea of Holyrood in the middle of Edinburgh was in part to draw on the growing whiskey tourism market. That is a big part of the industry, and
so Holyrood is, so maybe tell us a little bit about the distillery and the portfolio and what you like to focus on.
Holyrood is relatively small in the grand scheme of Scottish distilleries. You have the giants, and then you have the mid-size, and then Holyrood is at the smaller end. So we can produce right now about 240,000 liters a year. Mm-hmm. We limit our production to pretty much daytime hours, Monday to Friday, because we are in the middle of a residential area in Edinburgh. We have a beautiful building we're very, very proud of. It's a 200-year-old warehouse, stone, goods shed for one of the first railways in the UK back in the day when they were pulled on wooden rails by horses. And so we are pretty small. We're also a gin distillery. We have a separate gin still for our gin, but for whiskey, we're very traditional in our equipment. Pot still, double distillation kind of approach. What makes us different is what we do in our production process. So rather than, you'll know, and your listeners will know, the vast majority of distilleries in Scotland use the same malt and the same yeast. And they do that for very good reasons. That's efficiency, because they can get the most yield of alcohol from that type of production process. We also use a lot of pot still malt, as it's called, and distiller's yeast, but we also do a lot of innovation around malts that are more typically used in beer. For example, amber malt, crystal malt, chocolate malt, and so on. And we are also doing lots of different yeasts. Lots of yeasts that are, again, used in beer, but also wine yeast, champagne, Bordeaux, sake yeast, tequila yeast, something doesn't sound very appetizing called Black Death yeast. So we're doing all kinds of different things, and the idea.
How do you know which flavors each one delivers?
Well, that's where innovation comes in, and that's where experimentation comes in, and we sometimes don't know what the will be.
Sorry, that's Sadie.
Right. Yes, want some attention, I guess.
Yeah, no, place. We'll have to cut that out of the interview for sure.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
So we sometimes don't know, and sometimes we're very surprised by certain things. But that's part of learning. And we have a big fluorescent sign in the distillery that says test, learn, improve, repeat, because really that's what we're about. And as we learn, we get better at predicting certain things. I mean, we always have a pretty good idea. It's not like we're going into things completely blind. But as we continue to learn, we are getting more and more defined about what we can do. So, we have done some production runs for people who want certain flavor profiles, and we're probably one of the only distilleries in the world that can say, well, if you do it this way, we think that's what that will lead to. We have a very, very, our distilling team has learned a heck of a lot over the 5 years we've been doing this.
So how many different yeast strings in total do you play with?
Just as an example, in 2023, we did 99 different mash bills.
Wow.
With 39 different yeast strains involved in that. So now that was probably a little too far. We've scaled it back a little bit because we're starting to learn about what we really like and what really works well for us. But in the meantime, we've got lots of cool stuff in the warehouse that, can be a single cask in future years, or can be blended in, married into something to add another little layer of complexity in a larger release. So lots of tunes we can play.
So when you say 99 mash bills, am I correct with assuming not everything? I mean, how much of what you produce is single malts, and how much is?
It's all single malt whiskey, because it's all malted barley. Even when it's chocolate malt, it's still malted barley. Yeah.
So when you say mash bills, you mean the combinations of different types of barley?
Yeah, we will. We've never done a mash with 100% chocolate malt. That would be pretty idiotic because we would get sort of 1 liter of alcohol out of that. So it's always an inclusion amongst regular malt. We sort of learn the right percentage over time that gets us the flavors we want with, some balancing of yield requirements as well. So often, it's perhaps 90% pot still malt and 10% crystal, or 5% crystal and 5% chocolate, or you name it. We have done lots of different experiments.
So what are the trends that you're seeing going now in the Scotch and whiskey worlds? You're a fairly young distillery. You can evolve. That's the privilege of being young in the industry.
It is, and although we're located in Scotland, and Scotland is very traditional in its distilling approach. Most distilleries there have been doing this for decades, if not centuries. We are very new. I would say we're more like a New World distiller than a typical Scottish distiller.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so there's some really cool things happening around the world with some of the new distilleries in Australia and the US, Canada, and so on. And we're probably a little more like those small experimental distilleries than we are a typical Scotch distillery, even though everything we produce is Scotch whiskey.
So what are the trends that you're seeing that
I think the trends are that in Scotland, I think the whiskey industry will have to it will continue to be successful, but we know what's happening in the market right now. And so I think, there will have to be a little bit more reflection of consumer tastes and interests. And a lot of consumers are still very interested in trying new things. And I think that's why you're starting to see some of the newer distilleries getting a fair amount of press and a fair amount of attention because they are doing more experimental things. So, that if that's a trend, there you are. But we will see, because we are still very young. We've only released 3 what we call flagship whiskeys thus far.
Yeah. The Amber, the Amber, and the
Embra.
Ambra. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. It's Embra is our little inside joke, I guess, because if you ask someone from Edinburgh where they live, they'll just blurt out Embra. And it's also a little nod to the fact that it's lightly peated. And then the most recent release is Amber, which is a bit of a Frankenstein in a way. I mean, there's so much going on in there. Very different from Embra, and very different from our inaugural release, which was Arrival. Unfortunately, that didn't make it to the States, and is sold out pretty much everywhere at this point. But all 3 very distinct whiskeys, which is kind of where we're going right now. And if you hear anybody, if your listeners hear anybody say, "Oh, that's not Holyrood's flavor profile," you can tell them that Holyrood doesn't have a flavor profile. That's not what they're going for.
Wow, that's a very strong statement.
Well, at this stage, we are just learning what we can do with the distillery. Our distillery manager sort of says, you can't force the equipment to do things it doesn't want to do. So we're kind of learning how our distillery works best, what recipes it makes best, and For now, we won't have a flavor profile, and that'll probably be at least for another couple of years.
Yeah, so I guess that was my next question of, what, based on the trends, what are your plans for the next 5 years? But I'm hearing that experimentation and discovery is what you're about.
It is, and I think if one can make a comparison to craft breweries, which tend to have 2 or 3, maybe 4 sort of core products, and then around that they're doing a lot of innovation and having some fun with some other things. Ultimately, Holyrood may get there where we have 2 or 3 products that we think really resonate with consumers and get a great response and are successful for us. But we'll always do a fair amount of innovation. But until we get to that stage, we're just going to keep having some fun with putting different things out there. We've got some interesting things coming up this year.
Do you want to share a hint?
We've got in the middle of the year, we will be looking at some wine yeast releases. So, and really focusing on what French wine yeasts and the different impacts they have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that'll be coming out middle of the year, and then we'll have some other single casts and so on sprinkled in and around that. So, yeah.
So what is your personal favorite whiskey or Scotch?
Well, obviously, I will always say Holyrood, but
Ah,
I mean, the reality is that I'm also an explorer. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got into Scotch. I mean, you probably see over my shoulder, there's a cabinet full of Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and that's because my wife and I run the Canadian branch of the SMWS. There's so much variety with that brand, and that's really what I encourage consumers to do. Explore and try different things. Don't have preconceived notions about age or region, because most of that stuff is irrelevant. In the end, we drink whiskey because we love it and we enjoy it, and all that matters is what it tastes like. So, yeah.
okay. Is there anything that I didn't ask and you would like to share?
Don't think so. I mean, if you feel you've got what you need in terms of putting together a little segment for your show, I mean, we
Yeah,
want to make this successful for you as
yeah.
well. So if you feel you've got what you need, if there's any follow-up, we can.
I'll go back to the first question.
Okay.
The first question is why would you do this? Is it for the money? Is it for the passion? Is it for the experimentation? Is it for the community? Why are you doing this?
Well, a Canadian building a distillery in Scotland, and I certainly didn't do it alone. I've got co-founders who made a huge contribution. A lot of it is a little bit about proving something can be done, and to me, and in talking with my co-founder David Robertson, it was really about saying, look, there's a different way to produce here. And we can create fantastic and complex flavors off the spirit still before things go into cask. It's not all about the cask, which I think a lot of the industry, is very focused on innovation from, different cask approaches. And that's fine. And we do some of the same thing ourselves, but we go back further. And Holyrood has always been about proving that age doesn't matter. You can produce beautiful liquid at a young age by doing some different things with how you malt, how you mash, and how you ferment, and the raw materials that you use.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay, Rob. So thank you so much.
All right.
I will upload this. I don't think I'm even going to cut the part with Sadie. That was funny. I'm going to keep that. And I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and I'll send it to you to approve. And once you approve, we'll promote it.
Okay. All right. Did you want
Oh, yes.
the
See,
proof?
there is that thing that I asked to say. Okay. So tell us about your Redhead history, part of
All
the
right.
Redhead Club without, yeah, that you're actually informally, but in the core of the Redhead Club.
Well, Aline, I feel I belong on this channel because, yes, I come by my redhead credentials very honestly from birth, and frankly, you should see some elementary school pictures of a little kid with a big red afro. So, yes, I'm here with honest credentials.
Yeah, so I think that's that's allows you a free pass into the whiskey industry.
Well, all right.
That's why we're all here, basically.
What's that?
That's why we're all here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So from one redhead to another redhead, happy Friday.
Likewise.
And
And
thank you so much.
yeah, I hope it warms up for you. I mean, Calgarians are used to this, but yeah, it's
It's
been
just
a spell, hasn't it?
all right.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Bye, Rob. Thanks.